Hello again, my name is Sam Robinson, and this is the Gnostic Secretist podcast and channel on YouTube. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me tonight. And once again, I just want to say that everyone is welcome on this channel, and no matter your system of belief, spiritual or religious, or your background, everyone is welcome here. So thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight, I want to go over my blueprint or scheme of what I would call the 5 types of extrasensory perceptive individual types. So we're talking about different types of psychic archetypes as individuals go. So, and these 5 types, at least the way I see it and the way I break it down, there's someone who is a psychic, who is a natural psychic, or has developed that state in themselves where they have certain psychic abilities, and sometimes it's inborn and sometimes it's developed. Then you have what's be called a mentalist, someone who specifically develops powers of the mind and of the will, using the mind power to be developed, and they can use it as in many different ways. Then you would have what's called a medium or spiritualist, but normally nowadays it's just called a medium, and a medium is typically unconscious. So a lot of times I just call it the unconscious medium because it's inherent to them when they're born. So thus it is inborn mediumship, and it's unconscious in the sense that they didn't train for it. They didn't train to develop it. It happens whether they wanted to or not, and thus they are subject to its influences as an individual born with mediumistic abilities. So then the 4th type, which I hear a lot from a lot of people, or specifically my roommate, is the natural empath, someone who's empathic by nature. And then what you would have as a true initiated occultist, an actual occultist initiated into a system of development of one of the mystery schools. That would be the 5th type. And this is my scheme of the 5 types. And I don't know that I've seen this anywhere else, but I thought it would be something I should do a video on. So when we're talking about psychic states or psychic abilities, you have someone who is, we'll go into the first one. We have someone who is a psychic. And what does this mean? And what is the significance of this type of individual, whether developed or naturally born? A psychic is someone who has certain extrasensory perceptions that could be either clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairaudience, telepathic states, where they essentially have developed certain parts of their spiritual bodies, typically the ether or astral body, which allows them in their daily lives to pick up on certain things, almost like synchronicities. But the ones that I just mentioned, like claircognizance or clairaudience or clairvoyance, are much more obviously specific types of abilities. And, each one with its own purview and its own way of gathering information about the world through non-physical means, by picking up on certain subtle vibrations, either from their surroundings, from the individuals around them, or, the environment. So clairaudience is hearing at a distance. Clairvoyance is seeing is a form of seership, things from a distance. And claircognizance is a form of cognition that makes them come to certain solutions or to certain problems or certain ideas instinctively. They pick up on the answer as a form of knowing, intuitively knowing the truth about things. And then obviously telepathy is self-explanatory. And those are the major characteristics, I would say, of someone who's simply psychic, who's either trained to become psychic or meditated enough to have become psychic itself. Now, bear in mind, when it comes to spiritual development, these types of abilities that are in the psychic just happen automatically a lot of the time when they are trying to spiritually evolve and develop themselves through meditative practices and yoga and or say using the Kabbalistic tree as a method of spiritual development. They are not the end. They are not the end. They are simply something that occurs on the journey of the individual, and they're not supposed to be what you're after, but they do occur. I mean, they are a natural, as they would say, byproduct of the process of spiritually developing yourself and your innate capacities as a divine being with 7 principles, or in subtle bodies. They are not the desired outcome of spiritual development. You're not supposed to do spiritual development for specifically gaining psychic abilities. They are a byproduct of the process, not the end goal of it. Which, a lot of people can kind of get lost in that. So that is one thing I wanted to give out as a caveat as I talk about psychism. Then you have what's called a mentalist, or a lot of people would have maybe 100 years ago would have called this the movement of new thought. Like someone like a William Walter Atkinson, who wrote a whole lot of books on these types of processes. And the mentalist is someone who specifically develops the power of the mind itself and the will, where they are trying to influence change to occur with mental pressure and mental power. So they would do certain exercises that specifically develop the mind in that way and augment its capacity, where they could pressure things, where they could influence things either at a distance or in individuals, utilizing mental willpower. And it's a type of ability that can be used for good or for bad, as a lot of these things can. And you would not want to utilize it on another individual if you've gained that ability for any sort of nefarious purposes, or you'd be engaging in black magic. So, but causing change to occur through mental ability is what a mentalist would do. And that is another type of psychic individual archetype, as far as I'm concerned. It is different than being, using clairvoyance or claircognizance, or being a normal psychic, or, someone who's an unconscious medium. Now, an unconscious medium is mentioned a lot by Blavatsky, because the spiritualist movement, starting around the 1840s and going all the way to 1900 for the most part, was a movement that revolved around seances and spiritualist phenomenon. And a medium, an unconscious medium, is one who has that ability to interact with basically elementals and entities on the planes right around our plane, the lower astral and lower etheric planes that are interpenetrating our world. The unconscious medium cannot actually help the fact that they actually will respond to and encounter entities of this type. When I say entity, I just mean a non-physical being, like an elemental, like an undine, a sliff, a salamander, or a gnome, which are really just archetypes of the 4 elements and types of entities that are out there that they can interact with, as well as other types of beings, like what they call an elementary, which is a disembodied black magician in an astral shell, or in their astral form, roaming around. And they can also, so all these things can take control of the unconscious medium and then project a physical manifestation, a psychic physical manifestation of utilizing that individual's astral body, the unconscious medium's astral body, to then to project out spiritualistic phenomenon at a seance, which got massively misinterpreted by the spiritualist movement, and Blavatsky came in to try to correct some of that and explain what was actually going on, because they largely thought it had to do with bringing back the souls of the dead for interaction. They thought that they were trying to contact disembodied spirits And well, that is what they were trying to do, but that's not what actually occurs, because the unconscious medium is subject to these entities. They don't have control over it. It is an inherent ability that works against their own willpower. And so they would go into some sort of trance, which allows these entities to take over their body, and then use it for phenomenon, to show phenomenon, which then got largely misinterpreted because they actually thought they were contacting people that were dead. They thought they were contacting dead people and their disembodied souls. And that's what the movement was largely trying to do and thought they were doing, until they were, proven or shown by Blavatsky that this was not at all what was going on. Really, you were being inhabited and allowing your body to be taken over by elementals and various other beings, who then used the astral body of that medium to then project what they wanted to see as a spiritual form, like a ghost form, an apparition at these seances. Or, there's a lot of other things that happen where, there'll be things moved around. Things will be moved around, or there'll be, things tapping and moving chairs around. All sorts of spiritualistic phenomena would occur, which was done not by the actual medium, but by the entity that took over the medium and then performed these actions. So that's what an unconscious medium is. Now, you can be a conscious medium too, but that requires specific methods of development, and also largely is not based on being an inborn ability. You develop that ability as a natural person, as a normal person, really. Then you have what's called the natural empath, and a lot of people are empaths, it seems, out there. And an empath is someone who vibrates on an energy frequency level to be able to feel the emotions around them of other individuals almost intuitively. An empathic nature, and an empath is a very wonderful person. And though a lot of times they can be kind of subject to the emotionality of the individuals they're surrounded with, and they're very sensitive to those energies, and it can be a bad thing as well, because sometimes you really feel the negative emotions of other people very, very significantly, as well as the positive energies and emotional states of individuals around that empath. So, I'm an empath, and my roommate David's an empath, but it also gives them the ability to pick up on emotional energy signatures of individuals ahead of time, intuitively, when they're around them. That can also give them certain types of information that can be very beneficial. Like if someone has a nefarious or deceptive nature, they'll immediately pick up on this, and they'll know that they're deceptive inherently because they empathically pick up on those signals. Or but they're also normally very much able to be empathic with animals. Some people more than others, where they can really literally feel the emotional states of the animals around them. Normally specific animals, dogs and cats, probably horses, and it's a wonderful thing to be able to do that, to be able to pick up on those emotional states of the animals, and thus you are much more you're much more able to harmonize with animals. And they're typically animal lovers. Empaths are. They're largely very much people that love animals and can really, really understand and feel what the animal's going through, and thus animals are typically drawn to these people. Like, not a day goes by where my cat's not trying to break into my roommate's room. If he leaves the door open, he automatically gravitates into there. And I have a wonderful cat. He's a black cat named Inky, who I named after the Sumerian god Enki. And he is a wonderful cat. He's very much in tune with a lot of things, but he automatically goes to my roommate's room if he leaves it open, and just immediately charges in there, and he has to make sure he keeps his door closed, because the cat's just drawn to his empathic nature and the energy that he is permeated his room with. It's a natural beacon for my cat to try to go in there, and it's pretty funny to watch actually because it drives him crazy. And so so that partly proves my point right there, that my cat is automatically, for no reason whatsoever, drawn to this man that's my roommate, and automatically tries to go into his room all the time. So, and then lastly, the fifth type archetype is the one most desirable and the one hardest to obtain, which is an initiated occultist. An initiated occultist is someone who has specifically studied, developed, and been initiated into one of the occult traditions through the normal processes of joining a mystery school or joining an occult group that actually knows what they're doing and starts off on a probationary period, which at least that's how it always used to be, before being allowed to join. And this goes back to the ancient mystery schools. There was always a probationary period where you were, watched and observed first for like a couple years by the people, by the adepts of the school, the people already initiated. They watched you and put you on probation before you were even allowed to join and become what's called a neophyte, which is the very first stage in an occult school. But the probationary period could last from 1 to 3 years, and they basically observe you astrally and on the material plane for all the different characteristics that make you up, that are your makeup, whether you're moral and ethical, what type of inconsistencies you may or may not have, what type of predilections you have in terms of bad habits or vices. They study you, they observe you, they watch you, and they make sure that you're the right type of individual to join that school or that initiatory order first for several years. Then you are allowed in and you become a neophyte, and a neophyte is the first stage. It's the preparatory stage for initiation in the future. And a neophyte has to study the philosophy, study the methods of development, meditate, start to dive in and develop an energetic connection to the symbolism of the school and the symbolism involved with archetypal forces in nature. And eventually, after so many years, they are initiated into what's called the lesser mysteries. And the lesser mysteries are just the first part of an initiatory school. And depending on the school, there can be up to, 3 types of initiation, or there could be up to 9. And so as you work your way up, not everybody makes it to the higher mysteries. There's the lesser and the higher mysteries in initiatory occultism. And the ones below the lesser mysteries involve the ability you become more psychic, you become more in tune with the lower dimensional realms, the lower astral and etheric planes, and you start to contact your superconscious state. And with that, a lot of times becomes, you actually develop some psychism naturally, just from the process itself, but it's not the end goal of the process. And then as you work your way up the initiatory degrees, you gain a deeper and deeper insight into much more cosmic and macrocosmic archetypal concepts, archetypal laws, metaphysical, cosmological understanding of how the universe unfolds and how you relate into that, how you are part of that major process of cosmic unfoldment. And you get to the point, if you make it to the top and you get initiated into the higher mysteries, you become able to access your superconscious state on a regular basis during meditation, as well as your higher self, and what a lot of people would just call Christ consciousness, this consciousness of oneness that is largely considered the highest achievement for any normal person to develop in these schools. You're not supposed to become like a Buddha or a Jesus or a Bodhisattva. That's very rare to be able to achieve such an extreme level of adepthood, and most people don't even consider being able to do that. They consider Christ consciousness and this feeling of oneness, regular contacting this higher self of oneness, to be the most achievable state of consciousness during meditation on a regular basis, to be basically a true initiate and a true adept in the occult orders, the occult initiatory schools. And so these are the 5 types of archetypal extrasensory perception individual types that I've come up with and studied, and thought that there should be a form of differentiation and classification to, because too many of them kind of just get intermixed and intermingled with each other and become kind of a smorgasbord of ambiguity when it comes to this stuff. And there's different types of abilities, but there's also 5 different types of individuals or ways of developing those states of consciousness and those abilities that basically one can do. And then there's the 5, and these 5 are really the different states one may achieve depending on the path that they take in life. Some is inborn, the unconscious medium and the natural empath. That's just kind of how they're born. That's their type. But obviously it makes it a little easier for them to a degree to develop some of the other types if they so choose, and they start to study those schools of thought and systems of development. So I just wanted to go over this because partly because of my roommate, and made me think about this because he kept bringing up how he's an empath, and I kept trying to explain to him, well, that's just one type. So once again, I hope this is somewhat enlightening, and because this is a much more brief video, but I came up with this scheme, and I thought that it might help some individuals out there that are on the spiritual path of development understand different ways that you can develop and different forms of development that are out there. The initiatory cultist being the highest type, but it's not for everybody. Clearly, not everybody wants to take that path and go down such a serious road of spiritual development, because there's a lot that must be sacrificed to take that route. So there's the other ones that are also just as naturally progressive and worth it as much as the initiatory occultist path is, which is not for everybody at all. And that's all. That's really all I've got for this. And so once again, my name is Sam Robinson. Thank you for joining me tonight, and please like and subscribe and share this around. And we'll see you next time, very soon. Thank you.